you doing, young man?
Good, how are you?
Good, good.
I know that Margaret, Mayoral. Yeah. Count Kyle. And River Steele's not in here. You're out with the gentleman on the end of your room.
How you doing, Reverend? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Margaret called me and said, Margaret, are you doing Reverend water's in the refrigerator. We said, what? And there's some ice I forgot to get in. I'm not sure how much it's got advertised. Usually I don't do or anything like that. So. And the candidates aren't even here yet, right? Ma'am? The candidates aren't even here yet. Yes, they are. Oh, yes. I'm better. Good morning.
You married a couple of months, that's me there and my granddaughter. We got married in March, right? I've been with a couple of months.
Morning, how are you?
Hello.
How horrible this thing, you know.
I can imagine.
I'm a candidate. I'm running for Tacoma City Council. Yes. Your name's Latasha Palmer.
Oh my God.
Oh, okay. Did you? Have we knocked on your door yet? Oh, okay.
in North End.
Oh, well, no, I know.
I went to the Western Senior Center.
Yeah.
Never checked my email. Never years ago, I did something. I don't check that stuff. I don't consider myself a member of the Western Senior Center. But I'm on their list.
Yeah.
So, Anders Lyson said, you know, I can't remember how many thousand it was. So, and then
Yeah, I'm going to bed. Oh, good, yeah.
yeah.
How you doing? Good. No, I would have been ready. They asked me to do this. And so I said,
I did get a letter. Okay. I get things a little.
It's so
I don't need
crazy.
any help. And I'm finding that well, my whole schedule.
Yeah. It's not fun.
Well, I think I had.
Yeah, I think so too. I thought because it was like the worst thing I've ever experienced, and then after that, I said, oh, it's
I don't know, as the time went by, I was listening to some of the rhythms of the no chance. It just was dark. What's happening?
so it's hard to tell. Yeah, that's true.
But anyhow, it was the only reason I got this program. That's why I was here over 40 years. I looked at it over 40 years. Oh, yeah. So I did basically work for my granddaughter for just organized. Thank you for serving. Well, I'm not.
Introduce myself. Hi, I'm Latasha Palmer. I'm right first on the city council. I'm here to introduce myself and see how the city is and stuff. So is today a normal day that you all have more of these things that are around the stage, So like the
Okay, everybody, we're gonna get started in just a few minutes.
Which is very narrow. And because they can sell it, but it might be more like if you're trying to get back. Most of the lots. And it was more to do with that. The smallest lot that they would get. So.
Online, I saw it. Palmer. Oh, really? Where was it at? I don't know a whole lot about where my name comes from. I don't know if there's any connection. Yeah.
And then they changed the name of Palmer.
Yeah. So, well, it was between here and Graham, Washington, and so here I went to Rogers Elementary. And then we left for a couple of years, and then when I was in high school, I went to Bates Tech for Running Start. So, they're selling like 65 years or something now. Yeah.
All right, everybody. All right, all right. I wanted to make sure that that the media staff had a chance to get the camera on me. All right. All right. Good. Now I think we're ready to get started. We say praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Let's give God some praise. Get started. Today we want to welcome everyone to our 2025 political forum as we have this year the Tacoma mayoral candidates, and we are a little bit different than we normally are. We just, rather than having everybody from around the city and county and state, today we're just going to go head to head in this discussion and debate on issues that directly affect the community. Before we go any further in the political process, one of these two persons today will be the next mayor of Tacoma. And so this will be your opportunity to not only ask questions, but also hear the answers. A number of people have already submitted a number of questions. We are glad about it, as today we have a couple of folks that will be a part of the panel. We have Reverend Mike that will be here. He'll be representing portions of the community that also represent the unions. Also, Sister Greta, she's tying up a few knots, and she'll be here representing the business community, and certainly the African American business community up here on the Hilltop, as well as the Hilltop Business Association. We also will make sure that the faith-based community is also represented in some of our discussion. It's going to be important for us to make sure that we have a great sense of decorum. Amen. 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 I know how politics can be. Also, those of you that are joining us online, if you have questions as well, you can also put them in the chat, and we'll also make sure that we take the time to take a look at those. And if we're not already asking those questions, we'll make sure that your questions are also asked. We are definitely streaming live on all of our outlets, and want to make sure that you also understand that we want to thank our coordinator today, Ms. Veronica Batiste. I want to thank the Allen Cafe and Vashti Circle today. And we also want to thank today our moderator, amen, par excellence, Mr. Evan Henderson. today we are glad to have the two mayoral candidates today in the names of Anders Ibsen, your man, and John Hines. Give him a hand. Without further ado, amen, I'm just going to go sit down somewhere, amen, with all the questions, and also turn it over to Mr. F.S. Henderson. Let's give him another hand.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Again, my name is F.S. Henderson, and I'm a member here at Allen A.V. Church. It's a blessing to welcome you all to this mayoral forum on a bright Saturday morning, actually. Allen has always been more than a place of worship. For generations, churches like ours have been the heartbeat of community life. Places where we come together not only to pray, but also to speak truth, to organize, and to discern the kind of future we want for our city. Today we gather in that spirit. The decision before us is about more than who will hold the office of mayor. It's about leadership, values, and the future of Tacoma. Our community knows the challenges well, from affordable housing and public safety to equity, inclusion, and opportunity. We're here to hear directly from those who seek to lead us through these challenges. Here's how we will proceed. Each candidate will be asked to give some opening remarks and will be followed by questions that have been submitted by you to reflect the priorities of this congregation and the community. Both will have equal time to respond. We're going to try to have them respond in 1 minute. I may follow up if something needs clarity, but the goal is simple, that you, the people of Tacoma, leave here with a better sense of where these candidates stand. This is about discernment, not division. It's about making sure that every family, every neighborhood, and every community has a voice shaping Tacoma's future. So thank you for being here. Thank you to our church for hosting. And thank you to the candidates for showing up to engage in this important conversation. So let's begin. I'd like to hear from both the candidates in, I think, 1 minute. Will the opening remarks? And just to sort of give you opening remarks in terms of your reason for wanting to be mayor of the great city of Tacoma. And starting with John.
Yep, no problem. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking this Saturday to join us and hear more about what we're hoping to do with the next mayor. My name is John Hines. I have 1 minute. The reason I'm running for mayor is that I love this city, but I believe it could be better. I've been on the council for the last 5 years. I've seen a lot of things that have happened. I've seen a lot of transformational work the council's done, but I can see we do more. There's too many people in our community that are struggling. There's too many missed opportunities for too many people in our city. And I think with the right kind of leadership that can bring people together, we can help realize some of these dreams that a lot of us have for our community and making Tacoma the city we believe is all our destiny. And so I'm really happy to chat more about what I want to do about those specifically, but in this time,
Thanks, John. Anders.
Thank you, Pastor Steele, Alan, Andy, Mr. Henderson, for making the time for us today. My name is Anders Ibsen, former councilman, lifelong resident, and in a nutshell, why I'm running is my heart breaks for all the people who are struggling. My heart is full of inspiration for how it could be better, in a nutshell. I am deeply grateful, not just simply for you making the space for us, for the politicians, but for the work that you consistently do. It was 10 years ago, working with the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance, including faith communities like yours, that we increased the minimum wage for Tacoma working families, that we passed paid sick and safe leave, that we protected renters years after that. And there's numerous other issues facing working families of all faiths and creeds, but I'm constantly just very impressed by the faith community's work to do so, and if elected mayor, would continue making space to not just simply listen to your issues, but continue to bring you into the fold, empower your people, and make our city even better.
Thank you. So we're going to begin with the questions. I'll start since I haven't received some yet. I have a question around the concept of equity and justice in Tacoma. So the question I would start with is, what concrete steps will you take as mayor to dismantle any systemic bias or inequities that may be in Tacoma? And which disparities, for example, would you address first? And how might you measure progress? Start with John.
All right. So my background is I'm a public school teacher. I was an educator for 10 years, and now I work for the school district, and my job is in the Department of Academic Equity and Access. I work with Justina Johnson, and really our focus is on how do we remove barriers in our classrooms that are affecting the community of our students. So when we think about our highly capable programs, our advanced programs that I support, how do we make sure that we're not only opening the doors to them, but how are we making sure that once they're in those classes, they have access to materials they can find success, those classrooms are culture responsive and relevant. So that is really something that guides me in my work on the council when I think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was proud to be on the council when we passed Resolution 40622, which is our anti-racism commitment. I was proud to support Councilman Blocker when we incorporated that work into the city manager's work. As mayor, I look to continue to bring that forward and continue to look at a couple pieces. One, is our workforce reflective of the city population? So when we think about our city population, are more of the employees of the city, are they reflective of our city writ large? That's work we have to do, we've been working on it, but I want to commit to, in my time, making sure the city population reflects the workforce reflects our city population.
Thank you. Anderson.
So to me, leadership means you put your own house in order first before you tell others how to do it. We have, I think, as a city, done a fair amount of work with hiring. The problem is retention and growth. We hire talent only until we lose it consistently. That's a recurring problem with so many people from the black community, from other demographics, from the faith community that I've heard time and again, is that people don't feel like they're necessarily given the opportunity to succeed, which is why we consistently lose talented people to other organizations like the county or the private sector. And it's not just simply with hiring, but also contracting, for example. So opportunities if you're a small business owner, if you're a nonprofit trying to help the community. There are recurring frustrations that I keep hearing from people about the stability of funding, about who even hears about opportunities before they're even presented, for example. And we can talk about equity, we can pass resolutions, but if people don't actually feel included, and if the results aren't even there, then who are we to say? So I think getting our own house in order, beginning with the hiring process of the city manager, and making sure that the staff that we bring into the city reflect the values and actually carry them out day by day, based on your priorities.
Thank you. Speaking of hiring and retention, here's a question. We'll start with Anders first. We understand that that you will be staffing a new city manager. Who will select your? Let me see if I read this. Who will select your type of next city manager? I think that's how that's written. Or just tell us about your views about who should become the next city manager at Tacoma.
Well, above all, if I may start, above all, it should start with a good process. It should start with a process that inspires confidence, so that when the public sees the new person, that person is set up to succeed and has credibility both within the organization and the community. If it's someone who's just cherry-picked, or if the process looks like it just kind of came out of nowhere, if people don't understand how the hire was made, then that does not set up the organization or the person to do well. So that's the most important thing, is baking in the expectations of the community into that. As for me, myself, the person I'm really looking for is someone who can rebuild trust, someone who can rebuild credibility and trust within the organization, among the employees, our contractors, our unions, but also within the community with regard to public safety, with regard to police community relations, with regard to economic development and homelessness. Someone who has a record of entrepreneurship, of transformative leadership, and just not accepting the adage that this is the way we've always done it, so let's just keep doing it. So I'm looking for a transformative leader rooted in community.
Thank you. John.
Yes, and I just take a moment to just kind of, I'm going to push back on one of the points here, which is if you look at our data since 2019, you've seen we've increased the number of diverse representatives in our community that are working for the city. To recognize responsibilities for you to make sure to retain and keep people in our city, but we have been doing a lot of work around that. So I have to kind of push back on the idea that we have lost steam when we haven't done that. There's been a lot of hard work from city employees to make us more reflective. it begins, and again, it starts with the city manager, and I also agree we need to have a clear, transparent process where the public was part of that conversation, and where they are able to really trust what we land on. I want someone who's going to be innovative, creative, dynamic, work with the community to really push things forward. I think there's a lot of issues that come forward from the community. I really want a city manager to work with the council to lean in on those issues and really lead that transformational work. I really like to have us move away from some transactional work I think we've done in the past, where we work with communities and do things and then kind of move on, into more transformational work, where we build the brighter Tacoma we want to see, where everyone can see their place in it.
Great, thank you. And again, speaking of leadership, the role of the mayor, what is your view of the legacy of the current mayor, Mayor Victoria Wooders? John, let's start with you.
Yeah. No, I've been deeply honored and proud to be part of the council while Victoria's been over there. I support her on a lot of her work. And I think she's done a really good job of bringing people into the conversation who have not been part of it. And I think she's really led on issues like we're talking about, equity, inclusion, diversity. I think she's really led on issues of youth engagement and bringing more parts of the community into it. And so I'm deeply proud of that. And I'm deeply proud that she's supporting me here in my run for being the next mayor here for the city of Tacoma. I think looking ahead, Victoria and I are very similar in many ways. We have had our disagreements on things. And I think as we look ahead, I have some pretty clear ideas of how I want to approach the role as mayor and think about how we can continue to see the work of laying the groundwork of building trust with the community and continue to build upon that and really use that as a foundation to move forward.
Could you speak more directly into the...
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Anders.
Thank you. So I served with two mayors. I had the privilege of serving with both Mayor Strickland and Mayor Wooders. And I think they both uniquely contributed important improvements to the city's prestige. So Mayor Strickland helped us from an international perspective, which helped us with economic development types of improvements in our downtown core, along our waterfront, for example. Whereas Mayor Wooders really focused nationally on building our profile, including serving as the leader of the National Conference of Mayors, for example, improving our profile with our federal delegation. And these and other types of improvements are going to be very crucial as we navigate the just very chaotic federal landscape. Those kinds of partnerships that both mayors, prior administrations set forward are going to be very important as we try to build resiliency in the face of federal chaos, because it's going to be those state and regional and local partnerships that allow us to have greater stability for our people. In terms of my own unique focus, I would like to focus more regionally. I think that everything from housing stability, making sure that we're building resiliency and building systems that can withstand these budgetary pressures is going to be something I focus on.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that we're keen on in terms of work at the church is our missionary work, getting out in the communities and so forth. So here's a question. How many doors did either of you knock on in East or South Tacoma? We'll start with John.
Yes, so right now I'm going to go back out. I've been working in Hilltop, South Tacoma, about 1,200. East Tacoma, I'm working with one of my colleagues, about 500 doors in those areas. Really like targeting high propensity areas where communities are active where I can make connections with folks. So that's the areas I've been working on the most to try to drive them in. South Tacoma is a deep place in my heart. I grew up down there. Spent a lot of time like a high school alum, and so those areas have been the ones I've kind of been going back to and connect with.
Thank you. Anders.
Over 10,000. I started my campaign 19th and Sprague. I purposefully, despite being a former councilman from the North End, our actual neighbors were just off of 6th Ave. By design, I focused on making this campaign how I want to govern if elected, which is actually bringing the city to where people are instead of expecting people to come to me, right? And so, and that's reflected in just how many people reacted along the lines of, this is the first time a politician came to my door. That was kind of shocking, hearing from so many people who just have not been approached historically by politicians, like city leadership. And that's something that I want to sustain if elected, not just simply with forums, town halls, but just taking things directly to people. I want to give authorship. I don't want to simply make public engagement a box to check after the fact, but in my experience, decision-making begins at the very beginning, before something comes to a council vote, before the actual neighborhood councils or town hall. And the more that we can systematize that and make those kernels of decision-making something that starts with you, the more you can have confidence.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Anders, on this question to start. How do you feel about the city council's refusal to put workers' bill of rights on the ballot in November and February?
At best, it's extremely confusing. I'll say that. I was not in those meetings. I'm not privy to it. I'm not going to put words in folks' mouth. That being said, I served on the city council for 8 years, and we routinely put things on the ballot that were either initiatives or referenda, charter amendments, what have you, and it was very automatic. At no point did we ever do cute things like hunting or having our city attorneys dispute that something should be even on the ballot. And from what I've heard from community members, there's a real skepticism that this is something that the council simply didn't like politically, so they used maneuvers to try to do it. And regardless of whether or not that's true, it's just not a good look. I think that whatever your thoughts are and measure to on how good or bad a policy it is, the people who got the signatures follow the rules. And the city should do the same. And this is just another example of something that violates that sort of covenant of trust that people expect from the city, even with the basic stuff, because it's how you carry out the basics day by day that people need to see.
Yes. Thank you. Because I'm a current city council member and there's ongoing litigation, I have limits to what I can say in answering this question. But what I will say is the ideas behind the Workers' Bill of Rights, better wages, more predictable schedules, safe workplaces are all ideas I commit to and would continue to support as the mayor of the city of Tacoma. I would also just reflect that when the ruling came out, the judge was very clear that the council followed its procedural responsibilities and took the time it needed to evaluate this. So at that point, I can't say much more because of the ongoing litigation of the nature, but thank you.
Thank you. What's being done concerning police reform in Tacoma? Don, you want to start?
Yes. So since I've been on the council since 2020, we've led a lot of initiatives around police reform, including body-worn cameras, dash cameras. We completely updated the use of force policy for the city of Tacoma to more emphasize de-escalation versus escalating or using our physical force in policing. Going ahead, we're looking and working to try to get more community oversight and accountability. It's something I'm very committed to. I think the community should have more oversight in policing in our community because I think one of the ways we build trust, if we can trust in our police department, is having more people part of the process to basically explain what's happened, why it happened, have a greater understanding of the approach that the police department has taken. And so that's work that I'm committed to as the mayor and will continue to do in the years ahead.
So I think the progress the city has made has been commendable. The problem is people just don't know what's happening, and this has been really highlighted by the outgoing former chief and the very inconsistent or incomplete message from the city about what even happened. I mean, that wasn't really a source of confidence for a lot of people. That being said, I am a fan, as are many people, of the new interim police chief. It's up to the council in terms of making that position permanent and what that looks like, but fundamentally it's a question of culture. It's a question of being very clear with the community about what we're going to do, how we're going to improve the initial forays into non-armed, non-commissioned community service office, for example, the HEAL team, the HOPE team, not having a solution to every problem being a hammer, but a little bit more nuanced to de-escalate situations and to empower people rather than simply have a one-size-fits-all approach. And so I think that there is definitely some hope in that regard, but making sure that the leadership that the city council approves and hires, like the new city manager, the police chief, and just setting extremely clear community expectations is going to be key.
Both of you have talked about housing and housing affordability in Tacoma. Here's a question. I am a new Tacoma resident. What is your plan for making housing affordable, especially for seniors and for young individuals starting their careers? Anders.
Yes, well, I work in housing, and it is heartbreaking working with people who are trying to be first-time home buyers who are struggling to become such before they turn 40. It's utterly inexcusable. We've seen some progress with what's called the Home in Tacoma Rezone, allowing for more housing types. The issue is it's still very patchwork. There are a lot of people in the building community who are having trouble just getting basic permits. There are a lot of gaps that need to be cleaned up there. And the thing is, we need more attention to the real problems that people who are actually living in the community are identifying. So, for example, yes, we're getting more housing, but is it really housing people can't afford, right? I mean, we're seeing more construction downtown, which is great. We need to activate the downtown, but your average Tacoma family is not going to spend over $2,500 renting a one-bedroom or a studio, right? We need actual rentals that are starter homes, that are family-based rentals that people are actually going to afford, so that as we rise, we're lifting others rather than gentrifying and making it zero-sum. So making sure that everything from the financing options, the revisions to our code, our building code, our land use, reflects the need of making those problems more responded to.
Yes. No, thanks. Topic I've been working on quite a bit on the council, and I think to answer the question, like, what are we going to do? I think a couple pieces. Number one, we've invested in our housing trust fund, so taking dollars in the housing trust fund and helping build more affordable housing, like the Patsy Sorocono place in Lincoln, which is for seniors over age 55. I also think the city should explore using some of those trust fund dollars to buy existing housing and preserve it as affordable. That's one of the other problems we have, is that not only do we need more new housing that's affordable, but we have currently existing housing that is affordable now, and new people buy them, the rents go up, people are displaced. I think the city should play more role in kind of purchasing that and either working with community partners to preserve that. I think also I'm leading right now on kind of our tax exemption updates around multifamily tax exemption to encourage more affordable housing to be built through that can help address kind of more percentage of our units are actually affordable here in the city of Tacoma. And then finally, I think we need to work more with our faith partners such as yourselves. We have a lot of churches in our city that have lots of property, and like Shiloh Baptist is an example of how can we utilize some of that property to build more housing.
Time.
This is just a follow-up question of pro to the responses here. Do you support rent stabilization or rent control? Both.
I mean, the state passed a law saying that rent cannot go more than 7% a year. I'm in support of that right now, and I'm also a big fan of the multifamily tax exemption, which for the affordable units, the 12-year one, which rent restricts 20% of the units for the entire life of the tax exemption. So it's a way to generate rent-controlled, rent-restricted units. So both of those I'm in support of.
So the science on strict price controls is a little iffy, but that being said, I am skeptical of market-only solutions to housing, and I literally work in the housing market. I know enough to know the limitations of what we do, and so we need a mixed, all-the-above approach to housing. So on top of encouraging more types of development for first-time home buyers, for downsizers, for renters, I'm a very big fan of things like community land trusts, for example, whereas as people gain equity, it's not at the expense of the next person who comes later, cooperative housing, and also what's called social housing. So actually getting more into the business of constructing housing for the purpose of not being someone's investment, but actually just housing someone, and purposefully building too much housing so that you stabilize rents that way. So I think that we need an all-of-the-above approach. There's some great global examples in other parts of the country as well as in Europe and others, and I think we just need an all-of-the-above approach, both short-term as well as long-term.
Thank you. I've got a question relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we know that there's a lot of pushback at the national level. The question that I'm inserting one here. Will you protect, expand, or reduce pushback at the national level? Inclusion initiatives in the government. The question that I'm inserting one here. Will you protect, expand, or reduce diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the city government, and why?
Well, that's what I dedicated my life to.
Community be whole.
So since I've been a teacher and a football coach in my very earliest days, I was involved with the AVID program, which is all about breaking down barriers for nutrition. Well, that's what I've dedicated my life to, higher education. So since I've been a teacher, as a football coach in my very earliest days, I've dedicated to the AVID program, which is all about breaking down barriers for nutrition students to get represent students in higher education, to get access to those programs. So it's my whole life dedicated to helping specifically students of color, but so Black students to get more access to higher education opportunities. We're historically stronger, not weaker here. So it's a deep value to me to break down barriers and open doors for folks. And so I will continue to do that stable. I think diversity, equity, inclusion make us stronger, not weaker here in the state of Tacoma, no matter what national we can see into that. And I think one of the things I've always valued about this community from my days at Lincoln High School to my days on the council is the diversity of things, this community strength. And so is the mayor, and I think the more we can lean into that, the more our policies can align to bring more people part of our community and get diversity of the work that we're doing in the city to fight the stronger we will be. And so is the mayor, it's a core value of mine.
So equity and inclusion is about policy, but it's also even deeper than that, it's about leadership. People need to have the confidence that we have consistent values that they're not going to fold or knuckle under just because. So equity and inclusion is about policy, but it's also even deeper than that, it's about subtext of the question. People need to have the confidence that we have consistent values that we're not going to fold or knuckle under just because the Trump administration tries to bully us or scare us. Very close, I think that's federal, state. The subtext of the question, if I'm reading that correctly. So having consistent leadership doesn't just simply mean fostering, it means being intentional and working very closely with our federal, state, and local speaks to that as well. So that in the face of federal pressure, in the face of bullying or other tactics, that we can hold firm. My record speaks to that as well. Both as a former council member, I've worked to ensure that not only can we have equity and competence standards, we have to make sure that council, when we devise the department, but that they're actually married to the compensation philosophy. Because again, we can't simply hire our way into a more diverse workforce. We have to make sure that the growth, the professional development, that those opportunities are there to retain and attract and grow diverse talent as well. And that's something I'm dedicated to expanding as well. In a nonprofit role, I've also worked on similar projects.
Crime in Tacoma. Great, thank you.
In a word, homelessness.
There's a question from someone who said,
I've spoken to so many people in different neighborhoods, all the way from Salishan to Hilltop to Fern Hill to Proctor. In a word, everywhere in between, Browns Point. And I've spoken to so many people in different neighborhoods, all the way from Salishan to Hilltop to Fern Hill to Proctor to everywhere in between, Browns Point. Literally in the last 4 years. The key that people are having either when they're on the receiving end of it, like I spoke with a lady who teaches at high school here, literally in the last 4 years, in the last 2 years, the last 4 of her kids, people need to know that there's a classroom to gun violence. And so we can talk all day about policies, about smart things that we can do to curb this stuff, and that is important, but people need to know that there's engaged, present leadership that actually cares, that is just as heartbroken to you, and that just has the urgency to not accept what is happening. Because one child-related gun death is one too many. And making sure that we're backing it up and actually giving people a sense of what our plans are, clearly communicating those goals, and just making part of the solution instead of just a passive participant. That's the thing that's missing. It's not that we don't have hardworking people. It's not that folks in the city don't care, but actually stringing those connections to give a real through line. That's what's been missing, and it's what we need.
what do you feel?
Repeat the question one more time. Yeah, I think that's pretty specific. I mean, the big thing I come back to in my experience is what do I think is driving crime?
What do you think?
The challenges we're
What do you
seeing.
feel about driving crime in people?
Yeah. Often engaged. I mean, the big thing I come back to in my experience is these poverty. It's poverty driving the challenges we're seeing. When you think about why people often engage in criminal activity, is because hopelessness is reason, but it's also it's poverty. They don't have as much, and how do we build have a future? How do you see criminal activity? And I think one of the crime is how can we invest in media? How do we get resources? More important one is how do we build a future for folks in those areas? I think there's a response to crime that is very kind of acute and immediate, but I think the more important one is how do we kind of get to the root causes? So because what is happening is unaccepting in those communities. Too many young people pushing in, not pulling back. Too many situations in our community are being victimized. And not just push, so we have to think about how are we investing in those communities, how are we pushing in, not pulling back to the situations where we're seeing lots of crime. And not just pushing in with the police department, but pushing in with resources, pushing in with community partners, working with folks like yourselves to really try to live
Be negotiating with community oversight. Speaking of that, the last comment you made, here's a question. The city and the police union are supposed to be negotiating with community oversight of the department. However, both parties
Yes.
are delaying negotiations.
Simple answer is yes. It's
How would
critical
you
to us.
expedite
It's
the
what I
process,
believe.
and would you support meaningful
Is how to
oversight?
get closer to community oversight. Yes. Simple answer is yes. It's critical to us. It's what I've heard from the community. It's what I believe in. Is how do we get closer to community oversight? It's one of my top priorities. We're working forward on our bargaining with negotiations and confident that we will be able to move this forward and safety, meaningful oversight on the council. It's one of my top priorities. I think I've heard good oversight. Because I don't think that gives builders trust, accountability, and safety are mutually exclusive. I think they actually work hand in hand. And I think a good oversight model that gives builders trust in our communities will actually lead to safer safety. It's already one of our top priorities as we start thinking about our bargain. So it's a top priority. I will work with my council colleagues to
Yes, it's a
really
key
push
priority,
this
and
through.
on top of
It's already one of our top priorities. We
needs to
start
go
thinking
core
about
components of
our
how we're
bargain
going
right
to
now.
set expectations for the new police chief, as well as the new city manager. Yes, it's a key priority, and on top of individual bargaining, it needs to be a core component of how we're going to set expectations, but ensuring that as well as the community is as involved as possible in good on the council, good on the city for having that conversation with local 6, local 26, what have you, but ensuring that the community is as involved as possible in setting the standard for when we're confirming the new police chief, for when we're confirming the new city manager and the culture that they build within the organization. What does empowerment and accountability look like, and how can we set the community as well as the department up for success? That's what I'm looking for.
And thank you. Just another
They're
related
not
question.
currently, and I'm looking to
What
make
is
sure
your
they
stance
continue not.
on city police working with
Ever
ICE?
since the conversation of sanctuary cities or cities, whatever you want to call it,
They're
that's been a recurring not question. Currently, and the reality is they continue to work with the city. Ever since the conversation of sanctuary cities or cities, whatever you want to call it, that's been a recurring question. But the reality is, as someone who worked with the city prior as a former councilman, TPD has had this internal policy of not ratting people's immigration status out for decades. Not just the reason is because that's also we don't want to sow mistrust in community members who still housing to solve crimes. That the city has, that's something that not just simply with police, but also with benefits, with contracting, with the utility company, with housing. That the city has a very strong, unambiguous stance on that. We are not going to rat people's immigration status out because it has no clear basis in serving people or making the community safer, and we are going to continue doing that.
Information. The council also made a commitment. The Keep Washington Working Act is the law of the state. It includes us from working with ICE. Police that we do not turn the information. The council also made a commitment earlier this year that I was happy to vote for with my colleagues. And I keep it very simple. Continue to reaffirm that confirmation that we do not federalize. Police department is not turn over immigration information to ICE. And I keep it very simple, right? People say this to me, right? Like, that's a federal law. I said, well, and I think that's what we have to ask where we are with your taxes. That is federal law. I mean, what would you say there? Like, that's not your business, right? Like, that's a federal law. Why would you even ask that question? And I think that's where we have, that's where we are with this, right? That is federal law, and we have local laws. And our police department is doing the best they can to enforce the local laws and ordinances, keep people safe. Very simply, that we don't enforce stuff, we don't do the federal law work, and we don't work with ICE. And
how will you expand opportunities for minority-owned businesses? Thank you. I believe in terms of economic opportunity and workforce equity, just that. How will you expand opportunities for minority-owned businesses and workers? Since I believe the demographics work on it's just that the population is approximately 40% of.
We are a city of small businesses. It's the backbone of the community.
And what will you work on?
I think there's a couple of critical things we can do that I'd like to, that I want to work on. We are a city of small businesses. It's the backbone of our community, so we have to do everything we can to make sure they're successful. We have two businesses. I think there's a couple of critical things we can do that I'd like to, that I want to work on. Putting them out of business. Number one, permitting and some of the requirements for small businesses. Really, new businesses start. Turning the dials. We have too many businesses that are struggling under all of the rules and regulations that are either putting them out of business or making them hard to start a business or hard to expand. So really looking at turning the dials on the permitting process and what we have to require to make it easier to start a business and grow a business. City, I think the next step is we have to really focus on helping minority-owned businesses in our city. We've done some of that. I would really like to see us create to our city teams, where the business teams go out, not only just economic development, but public works, environmental services, every part of the organization, and goes out there proactively and works with these businesses and say, what are the issues you're facing? What can we help you with? Because I think that's what if you're trying to expand, what can we do to remove some of those barriers and really be deliberate and look at how we help.
So for me, everything starts from active listening. What are people actually saying from the effective community question? One of my biggest recurring frustration points is contracting. So for me, everything starts from active listening. What are people actually saying from the affected communities? Business contracting, one of the biggest recurring frustration points is contracting. There are areas of how city administrative practices when it comes to business contracting, for example, for public works or for nonprofits. There are consistent areas of, for example, when the money is distributed at different parts of the contract, other failure points that effectively give historically underutilized or marginalized businesses less of an edge for applying or less reason to do so. And just encouraging them further down the road for that doesn't simply show up, start hiring, getting those contracts or money or so something. But that's one example, but it points to a deeper purpose of just having present leadership. Having present leadership that doesn't simply show up when you want votes or money or support for something, but showing up consistently and just having to identify that kind of boring consistency throughout the year. That's less transactional and more relational, actually focused on making it about you rather than us. So identifying what those areas are and also providing greater opportunities.
Diversity in the trades. Thank you. How can the city support this? Churches and the building trades are working for pre-apprenticeship.
That's why I'm proud to be endorsed by skilled trades unions, including the South Side Building Construction Trades Council and the organized labor in generally throughout most of the project labor agreements would be a great start. That's why I'm proud to be endorsed by the skilled trades unions, including the South Side Building Construction Trades Council and the organized labor in generally throughout most of the unions in the city of Tacoma. And I think project labor agreements, apprenticeship utilization components, making sure that that's baked into city public works, type of development landscape, type of opportunities, and also leveraging our capable systems. So I think one of the most underutilized parts of our economic development landscape is our port maritime as well as our manufacturing centers in general. How can we better align our educational system and other resources to attract, grow, and retain key clusters, and making sure that we're being really deliberate and intentional to make it as equitable as possible when we do have those periods of growth. Those are just a few examples.
Yeah, I think the critical piece is just making sure we're doing our part to make sure more people are aware of what's available in the city. So we have limited communication, we have a lot of great jobs in the city, they're representing a lot of outreach to say, and we need to make sure more people know those exist. Right? So that does work with kids. I would really like to commit with faith-based community organizations. It's doing doing a lot of outreach to say, here are potential jobs that are available, right? How can we identify them sooner? I would really like to commit, and something I've been talking about is kind of mentorship or internships for all students. Every single home place. Because I think, right, can we identify an internship opportunity or apprenticeship opportunity? Every single student comes out, not just the ones who want to do it, but the ones who, every single one. Because I think helping young people see the future, including apprenticeships, labor roles and labor, some students that labor unions is going to be critical to helping them understand kind of pathways. I've taught school for a long time. For sometimes, some students are going to go to college and beyond. Some students, that's not what they want to do. We need to make sure every kid, no matter who they are, has an idea, and I want to work with the city, the school district to really try to do that.
I just following up on that.
I think
for
the school district has, and I work for it, so I have to
support quality of education.
So what could the city do about it? Think about the school day. I think for the school district has, and I work for it, so I have to think on the city side, it's how are we investing things? So what could the city do about it? And I like to think about the school day as kind of the 8 through 3, Monday through Friday. I think for the city side, it's how are we investing around those times? How are we helping support kind of before school programs for childcare? How are we helping to make sure after school there's more programming available for young people to be engaged? How can it be productive and give them different experiences, whether it's working, whether it's how we build arts, whether it's athletics. Because I would say athletics and educational experiences. And then what are we doing at what hours and things that are sure those things are happening on the week? And I think that's how do we build a box around the schools? Because I would say that my educational experience was enriched by what I was able to do outside of the school hall. And I think that's where the city was really in. And you all, partners, faith-based community, can be critical components of how do we make sure that more kids have access to meaningful, productive things outside of school day. I think it will mean that they know more than just reading, writing, arithmetic. They know meaning, purpose, art. And I think we should think into how we can build spirituality, meaning, purpose.
So part of it is the supportive services the city helps with, so it really does take a village. I think the city does really good work when it comes to supporting programs like Summer Late Nights, for example, and Whole Child. So part of it is the supportive services the city helps with, so it really does take a village. I think the city does really good work neighborhoods and supporting programs like Summer Late Nights, for example, and Whole Child. But more broadly, it's just ensuring that children are safe and cared for and are actually coming from neighborhoods and communities that empower them rather than hold them back. I mean, 1 in 10, there's only so much educational opportunity with regard to more affluent neighborhoods. If your school's 9% of the whole district, for example, or 1 in 10 children, like at Lincoln High School, is focus in that very equitable lens. So in some respects, what's good for children is what's good for the community as a whole. Just making resilient, affordable, safe neighborhoods, and just having a focus in that very equitable lens when it comes to what's good for our children. And I think that, for example, when it comes to homelessness, that's been a lens that's really missed. That we're mostly just reactive and focused on most business components. But why don't we talk more about that? Why don't we talk about how we have children in the school system who are surfing couches and living in cars, or just kids aging out of the foster care system with nowhere to go, for example. So resiliency and equity is how we have good schools.
Question around homelessness, there's several questions that relate to that, so I'm going to read one. Okay, we're going to turn to the question around homelessness. There's several questions that relate to that, so I'm going to read one. And maybe start, what is a plan? The first one, and then the second one. It says homelessness is rampant everywhere. I look, people are amped everywhere. What is a plan?
So, as Anders pointed out, I think it's a couple pieces. Number one, it's a regional problem, so working with the county and understanding how we get more resources. So, as Anders pointed out, I think it's a couple pieces. Number one, it's a regional problem, so working with the county and understanding how we get more resources. Not homelessness. 80% of Tacoma, but out in the outlying areas of the county. Well, most recent point in time counts showed that of the 80% of people experiencing homelessness, or 80% of the shelter beds are inside the city of Tacoma. Well, only 20% of the people who are currently experiencing homelessness had the last address of in the city. It is also us looking at how we can and other partners to better serve the community and having shelter options. Number one is expanding shelter and line recently. It's been that challenge. Number two is also us looking at how we can use our dollars to try to expand housing use and shelter options. We had some shelter options that come offline recently. It's been a real challenge. But we have Tacoma Rescue Mission opening 100 beds here shortly. And then I think finally, the last one is use our household 1590 funds to really try to set up some more shelter options like the tiny home villages. So, there's a nice house.
So in a
and then I think finally the last one is
being
aware of
our
neighborhoods.
can do, so we're working more regionally and not painting with this. Okay, 1 minute, let's do this.
We are here
So in a very big nutshell, being aware of our limitations and what we can do is working more regionally and not painting with this broad brush. We are here because of decades of privatization of the social safety net due to the deinstitutionalization of mentioning here, usually the district came in a really bad hand. And so the next best thing to a functional national government or fully funded state apparatus is, I mentioned smart regional partnerships. I support that along with identifying what the gaps are even further. However, we also can't paint with a broad brush. Far too often when we think of homelessness, we're just thinking of the most invisible, low area individuals, people who are housing, dealing with either mental illness, chemical dependency, types of the most visible sign of it. And that is certainly a component in need of everything from supportive housing, jail, and other diversionary types of resources. But there's the invisible working class component of folks who are simply just not making enough to cover their cost of living. We're also talking about kids, as we mentioned in the previous question. So strategies for people who actually need them. So harm reduction matters, right? So there are certainly people who might have moral problems, or I've talked with people who so harm reduction matters, right? So there are certainly it's tough. People who might have moral problems, or I've talked with people who say, why would you just like everything else, everything fits into the rubric. And it's tough and tricky, obviously, but at the same time, we have to make evidence-based decisions that enhance public health. And just like everything else, everything fits into the rubric of how do we move our communities to a more sustainable direction, right? And that's everything from increasing meaningful shelter space, not just in the city limits, but regionally and countywide. That's the Good Neighbor Village in Spanaway, for example. That's making sure there's more workforce housing for folks who just need more affordable housing so they can pay their bills and have less than 50% of their monthly income go towards rent, for example. And while services like that are just one component, it's not about continuing and making sure that people have simply a one-size-fits-all. Only that, but that we're keeping people alive long enough to receive treatment and then to actually get better. That's having more of a public health approach rather than simply a one-size-fits-all.
I think when we begin with this question, I just want to break it down real personal. And I think I usually say your child, either sister, cousin, aunt, I was battling addiction. Would you want there to be availability in our campus for overdose? Beyond that, and I think I usually say that I understand concerns about strategies to bring people into treatment, to get people access to treatment. Beyond that, though, I would say that we really utilize the harm reduction strategies to bring people into treatment, to get people access to treatment. Currently, there's no 24-hour place where you can go and get methadone or epinephrine. We have one place till 11 p.m. So one thing I'd like to do as mayor is, like, while we're doing the harm reduction, I'd like to stand treatment options to people. While I know there's a challenge of, like, should we be giving people drugs that I see that every using and while kill lives and work right services to and I think that while I know there's that challenge of, like, should we be giving people these things, I see that every opportunity with a chance to catch somebody at the right moment to get them the treatment they need to move on.
And one final question related to homeless people.
Yeah, so first and foremost, this involves speaking with people actually doing the work. There was a recent article in Grit City magazine, you might have read it. It was in yeah, so first and foremost, this involves speaking with the people actually doing the work. There was a recent article in Grit City magazine, you might have read it. It was an anonymous article, which that itself is kind of revealing. Areas for it was called Confessions of a Member of the obviously there's a resource question that there was no make of that what you will, but there are a lot of areas for improvement within what's already working. So obviously there's a resource question, but there was no way around that. A local government or even a series of local governments is ill-equipped to handle this regional or national conversation. But that being said, we can innovate. We can make sure that we're actually listening to folks performing the work. But where I would want to start is in this regional conversation that has a trend in the right direction. We need to make sure that we're actually listening to folks performing the work as well as receiving it and seeing what the failure points are. So, for example, in having more of a competitive grant-making system through human services commissions, for example, are we creating incentives that are perhaps barriers to collaboration between the organizations? Can we have greater transparency?
Because the state's primary responsibility is for mental health services, I think since we're I mean, I think first and foremost, the work of the state, because the state's primary responsibility is for mental health services, I mean, since we're, often it is one of the primary duties that they have, and it's been severely underfunded at the state level. I think I didn't just talk about this earlier, so I would like to get us to a state to expand options and meet people where they are, right? And I hate when people say kids, like those kids, all those kids. I think I didn't get to talk about this earlier, but I really like to get us to a by name list for people who stand specific on this, because I was a teacher, right? And I hate when people say kids, like those kids, all those kids. Like, I mean, Brian, James, and Mary. What I do need to get specific about what we're talking about here, and I think we need to get a by name list of people who are on our streets and say, hey, Mary is battling substance use disorder and mental illness. What resources can we get her? Brian, he's just battling substance disorder, but he's trying to care in many ways, and really trying to dive in and making sure that people work with the services they need, including mental health services. There's not enough, but I think there are many ways if we knew these mental work, we could treat them at the right time.
Can you bring more jobs to Tacoma? Great, so I'm going to shift a bit to jobs.
Yes.
And I've got a couple of questions here.
I think the key is three pieces.
Can you bring more jobs to
we
Tacoma?
need to talk to the businesses who are already here and help them grow. Yes. We need to ask them. Yes, we can. I think the key is three pieces. Number one, we need to talk to the businesses who are already here and help them grow. We need to ask them, like, what is the barrier between you going from a 5-person business to a 10-person business? How do you 10-person business to a 24-person business? What industries are one here? Help our current businesses grow and thrive. Number two, we can look at clusters. So around UWT, around our port, what industries are already here and who can we bring in to do that? Money coming into the community. And then number three, we need to really create a climate that our businesses want to come and be here, right? And we want them to invest here. We need more money coming into the community, coming here to sell things, someplace house people, and we need more things that we can export out that way, right? So those kind of high-level things. So basically, we need more people, businesses coming here that sell things someplace else. And then when we have that money, we can use that money to not only pay the taxes for the city, we can invest in services. It also gives more charitable contributions.
Yes, and with a very important caveat, churches, and that is
so
we need jobs for
by encouraging people to show up here.
So we're not averse to having new entrants to Tacoma. Yes, and with a very important caveat, and that is just like jobs for people who are here. as well.
Very
So
strong experience.
We're not averse to having a new entrance zero sum or very
Nice things happen, but the expense
but
of folks who are.
just like with housing, there's been a very strong experience. A lot of people have had kind of a zero sum, nice things happen, but the expense of folks who are over here, right? And we don't want that. We want to those as we rise. And so some examples of that would include things like utilizing skilled trades better, so actual project-based labor agreements, for example, opportunities for folks to actually get a real pipeline from the skilled trades to real living wage job opportunities, for example. I do support the idea of clusters, but also making sure we're being really smart about identifying what the specific areas are, because there are different neighborhood neighborhoods. The specific needs of the Port Tide Flats are different than in the Valley, the UWT versus the North Downtown. So just being very clear and make sure that above all, it just, for me, it goes back to leadership and staffing, making sure that the council is being very intentional about who we bring into the city, about who we hire, to make sure that we're actively listening and reflecting those needs.
But in many other parts of the city. What will you do? Thank you. John.
Yeah, and there,
John.
I think to come back to this, yeah, and there's, I think, so to come back to this, right, I think, right, the reason there isn't a Starbucks is that Starbucks is a corporation that has a clear model where they put things. It's like, why there's not grocery stores in Starbucks, first right? I would just corporations have over drop a pin, they say how much is in this area, and we have a grocery store here, and Starbucks is the same thing. So if we wanted to bring a Starbucks, first of all, I might just say maybe we should bring a local coffee shop or some other organizations here that want to serve the community, increasing their earning power. But if we were going to bring a Starbucks, it all comes back to that idea of investing in the community, right? Building folks up but here, increasing their earning power, increasing the investments here, and building a stronger community. Deserve a better. Then they'll show up. Maybe we don't want it then, but that's every day I'm sad. My two kids from the Safeway on Hilltop to the Safeway. Deserve a better Safeway on Hilltop. Every day I'm sad. My two kids from Tacoma to the Safeway. Pearl, and they're like, oh my God, this is a Safeway. This looks nothing like the one on Hilltop. I'm like, darn it, it's not. Sorry.
So, Starbucks is great. So my initial question is what's wrong with Three Hearts and Red Oak? It's just about talent, your share being safety, and just a sense of community. So Starbucks is great. I think we absolutely feel well very well. But for me, what's more important is just vitality, safety, and just a sense of community. Whatever that looks like. We've seen it. I think the people of Hilltop are very well equipped to power into the neighborhood. I think we've seen it. We've seen it with the City Street Fair. We've seen it with what's been happening along the corridor, and I think we can continue seeing it. And I think putting that front and center of how the city makes decisions is really vital. I think that yes, development, the Rite Aid, for example, with that site, making sure that any new housing reflects affordability, so it's not just continued displacement, for example, is going to be key. And yes, let's clean up the unsafe way. Absolutely.
District 1. How do we know? Here's a question. There are several questions from online. Vote for council members for district 1. How do we know?
Great question. I always like to start by saying this. Like, I live more on South First. Great question. I always like to start by saying this. Like, I live more on 5212 South Wilkinson in South Tacoma than I've lived in the North End. I moved to the North End after graduating from Lincoln High School, going to Stewart Middle School, and my mom and my dad being the truck driver at the Port of Tacoma. My mom worked on South Tacoma Way as a pawnbroker. I lived in every part of the city. Most of my life, I think I'm actually probably the wrong person. My friends are there, my family's there. I definitely do tell those love and care about are there. And I'm from. I care about South Tacoma, and I think one of the things that I say, I think I'm actually probably the wrong person to represent the North End and the West End. Because I definitely do tell those folks many times, and I'm from the South End, and it's an important, vital part of the community, and it's important that we invest there too as they push back on me sometimes. So I think as me as the mayor, you're not getting someone who, represents the North End and the West End of Tacoma, but it's someone who's deeply rooted in the South End. There's nothing wrong with the South End, let me be clear about that. It's a wonderful place. I don't want to fix it. I just want to make it the entire city up, and which actually is the entire city up. So there's nothing wrong with the South End, let me be clear about that. It's a wonderful place. I don't want to fix it. I just want to make it the best it can be.
This campaign has been a reflection of that. My very first actually going to where people are, engaging folks and actually listening. That's the primary answer. And this campaign has been a reflection of that. My very first door that I hit in this campaign, January 2nd, was in 1901 in Southbridge. Just based on what the campaign begins and probably ends around Hilltop Central, South End. And I think that's really telling. One, these are places that, just based on what people are telling me, not just my first person to come to my door, not the first person in 10 years to come to my door. And I think that's really telling. So ensuring that not just my own personal beliefs and attitudes and whatnot, but actually backing that up with how the city as an organization practices. So making sure that we're actually using lived experience as input for making policy rather than just an output. So that's something I did when I worked on our participatory budgeting process, for example, to actually give people real authority for making reflect those in our own neighborhoods. So that we're actually backing up words with action and making sure that the people that we hire, from the city manager, the police chief, reflect those and actually come to you rather than you come to us.
What separates you from your opponent? Or does it matter who? Okay, next question. This is
So John and I are neighbors, right? You know, the north end of the right? I would say, I mean, obviously like and respect John. He's been on the council before. I think. So John and I are neighbors, right? You know, different is besides having thread work. I would say, I mean, I obviously like and respect John. He's been on the council before. I think the thing that would make me different is, besides having done the work for 8 years and you know a little bit of other work in family as well, is I'm also the only private employer in the race as well. I own 2 successful businesses in the managing broker private sector, as well as private hiring to support military families and local Tacoma homeowners, as well as a certified residential appraiser. I've also hired I have the private sector as well as private hiring experience, which I think is pretty crucial as we make key decisions. I've also hired 2 city managers and utility directors as well. So that's literally one of the most important things we're going to be doing going into the first quarter is hiring the chief executive officer of the city, running us a process you can feel confident in, and making sure they reflect the will of the people. I think that's going to be really crucial because it's those day-to-day experiences that you have with the city that inform your trust and improve your behavior.
I have a lot of respect for him. I would just say, let's look at the record. So we're going to go online and pull out Legislar. No, I think what I would start with is just, again, Anderson, I have a lot of respect for him. I would just say, let's look at the record. How many have I been a part of? So we're going to go online and pull out Legislar. You see how many pieces of legislation was my important part of one of the public council rate years? Sponsor number is 8. It's actually rewriting. How many have I been a part of in my past 10, 5 years, 110 years? My opponent. Let me dive in and look at how many ordinances I was a co-sponsor or sponsor of. Which is actually what I would say. I have 2 ordinances coming forward. I've been part of 10 ordinances in my 5 years. So I would just say that I think there's a productivity, there's an ability to drive change and bring it forward. And so what I would say, and I have 2 ordinances coming forward, one on Tuesday and one the following Tuesday, and change. So I would just say that I think there's a productivity, there's an ability to drive change and bring it forward, not just to talk about what we want to see, but actually to move the needle on policy and change the codes and laws to reflect what we want to see in the city that I bring that my opponent does not.
Should faith-based organizations, thank you. This is a question that I had drafted, play in shaping the city. What role should faith-based
So something I want
organizations,
to do next year,
especially African
I
American
struggle
churches,
with everyone looking at a problem
play
and
in
saying
shaping
that's
the
the city's
city's
job.
politics?
I think there's a lot of capacity in this. So something I want to do next year, I want to launch as the mayor. I struggle with everyone looking at a problem and saying that's the city's job to fix it. I think there's a lot of capacity in this community, the faith-based community. And something I want to launch as the mayor is a year of service. Is a key partner for a year of commitment to help us improve our city, where we drive change and do that work. I think we have a lot of faith because you have history and historically done that. And one way that you key partner for us as a city and me as a mayor to really drive change in our city. I think we have a lot of divides in our community, and we need to build bridges. And as a person, I am a Catholic work together on projects in dire size who I am and what I will be. And I see you all as have a value and it's critical and have historically played a value. And as a person, I am a Catholic and a person of faith. In dire tribes who I am, I would like to invite back in. And I think you have a valuable role and have historically played a valuable role in building the
Well, as it said here, faith without works is dead, right?
bridging divides.
So it's
I'd really
not
like
even
to
a
invite
question,
back in
it's
to be
more a
part of the
question of
conversation as we move
we
forward.
can't afford to rule anyone out because the scope of the work we have.
Well, as
to
it
do
said
is
here,
so
faith
vast.
without works is dead,
Housing,
right?
so it's not even a question, it's more a question of,
go a step further.
we can't afford to rule anyone out because the
absolutely
scope of the work we have to do is so vast. Everything from housing to even just general participation. And I would go a step further in that we absolutely need your assistance when it comes to the provisioning of services. One of my really formative experiences in this campaign was speaking with members, but even beyond that, as church, going out Fulton Avenue and policies too. That's meeting high schoolers who were staying in their shelters, working with leadership in the Tacoma Minister Alliance to pass home. But even beyond that, we need your help and your perspective for other policies too. That's why 10 years ago it was a privilege working with the leadership of the Tacoma Minister Alliance to pass a paid sick leave and our minimum wage increase. I would respectfully push back on my opponent's claims about production. They're actually working, but I think the faith community has my website historically nationally locally done a great deal. We're going to look at legislation that I've done. My card has a link to that. But I think the faith community has historically, nationally as well as locally, done a great deal. We're going to continue leaning on that help more than ever. Yes.
Thank you. Will churches be allowed city contracts under your administration? There's a question, that's all.
Yes. Yeah, I would. Yes. I just was curious. Are they currently precluded from having city contracts? This one time?
I don't know. There's a question, that's all.
Yeah, I would. Yes. I just was curious if they were
deficit. And so
I'll do a lot of valuable work.
Thank you. So let's talk about the city
I'm going to try to do my best.
Does the city have a budget deficit?
Yes, the city does have a budget.
And so what?
The challenge is our revenues do not keep pace. I'm going to try to do my best and just a clear indication. Yes, the city does have a budget of 1%. The challenge is our revenues do not keep pace with our expenses. We're always going to try, just as a clear indication. Our property taxes are held at 1% per year in property taxes, but almost every other expense we face grows faster than that. And so we're always in a structural deficit and trying to those really put a lot of burden. Our four main sources of revenue are property taxes, sales taxes, utilities, business taxes. And so of those levers, 3 of those really put a lot of burden on our community. So if we're ever going to get out of our structural deficit, like keeping pace with the expenses that keep continuing to grow, it's going to require us looking at how we extend our business and tax base, and get more businesses, more people do business here, because that is how we will bend that curve of our costs. Continuing to raise taxes on our community is going to have a lot of unintended consequences.
So we're here right now. It's very similar to homelessness in that we are dealt a really bad hand by irresponsibility at a higher level. Just like with homelessness, it's because of decades of. So we're here right now. It's very similar to homelessness in that we are dealt a really bad hand by irresponsibility at a higher level. Just like with homelessness, it's because of decades of privatization due to Reagan-era deinstitutionalization. We have a structural deficit because we have a state tax code that is dysfunctional and set up to cycle. Because, as John mentioned, the property tax goes down every year in real dollars. It's because sales and business taxes are boom bust because they're based on the business cycle. And more importantly, if you look at the frailty of our local economy, it's because in Washington State, if you're working poor, you're paying upwards of 10 to 12% of all your gross income in state and local taxes and fees and so forth. If you're Jeff Bezos, if you're a billionaire, you're paying 2% or less. So that's a longer conversation. Therein lies the problem, is we have a system that is basically rigged against retirees and working people that privileged people reach, just like profit offers those people's work. And so that's a longer conversation, and obviously I'm not running for governor, but at the same time, the mayor and local governments do have a larger reach, just like with regard to immigration, for example. We have to work together to make the best of our local code as well as advocate for fair state solutions too. That's leadership.
Or guidance on how programs will. Okay, here's a question. Workers for Catholic Community Services, how will you as have been laid off without notice or guidance on how programs will be managed without the staff?
So I'm proud to be endorsed by a lot of the organizations representing these nonprofits, including SAU, for example. So one of the chief responsibilities of being an elected leader. So I'm proud to be endorsed by a lot of the organizations representing these nonprofits, including SAU, for example. So one of the chief responsibilities of being an elected leader is being a responsible, reasonable voice who can bring people together. That includes managing labor, that includes members of the community, not just the conflict. And something that I have done in the past is make sure that working people know that they have an ally, making sure that they actually have someone who's going to not just return the calls, but actually be there with having a meaningful conversation, and also making sure that there's a pragmatic conversation to be had so that when there's something that needs to be resolved, it's resolved quickly and with certainty. And so whether that's having a meaningful conversation with Catholic Community Services or other organizations, or just being really clear about what the scope of these services is, that's something that a mayor can and should do.
Yeah, I would start with why. like, starting with the question, well, why are we laying off employees? Really understanding the first force. Because Sanders wrote, and making sure folks are represented, so there's a collective bargaining agreement that says who gets laid off when things happen, right? And it's clear. So first of all, making sure we're supporting and making sure that people we work with are protecting and trying to get collectively bargaining conversation, make sure first of all, no loss by which happens. And I would get to the why have a conversation. Why are we laying people off? I think that's where the mayor begins, is trying to get a proactive in this conversation. Because we first of all know this is coming. And two, how do we have a conversation with the organizations before they get to that point? Are there, is it funding situation? Could we help either rather than trying to provide funding or help them find rest? Is it a focus of the contracting we have? Why are we in this situation? That first is rather than trying to is really trying to get address it, on the back end. How do we get the active in the front end? Is really trying to work with these folks to understand why we were here. And I think that's the kind of leadership I want to bring as a mayor, is really trying to get ahead of some of these things. I think we've been too reactive and like to be more proactive.
John, thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, before I came here, I was on the library board of trustees for 3 years. So libraries are deeply meaningful to me, not only as a place. For books, before I came here, I was on the library board of trustees for 3 years. So libraries are deeply library, not only as a place for books, not only a place for schools or for education, but as a repository for the community. So I am deeply supportive of a Hilltop Library. I do think we should need to look at a library bond, able to comment in a library budget, but I am for that. We've done a feasibility study on the Hilltop Library, and the costs are currently, we owe libraries, we're not able to comment in our library budget, but I am committed to look at ways we can raise money to do that, because I do think we owe
I'm absolutely
library
supportive
services
of making sure
and a library
libraries don't
to
feel
local
underinvested and that
and
people
to
have
decide
those
which libraries
really important third spaces. At the same time, we also have to be creative and not just. I'm absolutely supportive of making sure communities don't feel underinvested and that people have those really important third spaces. At the same time, we also have to be creative and not just simply accept things as they have always been. And that speaks to both the current fiscal realities, because whether we're allocating money for the general fund, or if we're putting on a bond and then incurring debt service, which effectively is money off the general fund, for example, community space, could it be something? Reimagining what it is that we want exactly. So is it because people want just simply a place to check out books for their kids? Is it a community space? Just could it be something I would start like a space for subletting to a cafe, like the Tacoma Public Utilities Building does, for example, and maybe offset to the debt service. So just, I would start with what the actual goal is of the community members, and not just simply imposing our own ideas, and also just where the best bang for the buck is. Could it be on the corridor and benefiting from the foot traffic? Could it be in a different place entirely? It should be community driven for the highest return on investment to the community's needs, as well as the city's long-term fiscal sustainability, so that we're not over-promising. We can sustainably do
Is
it.
it possible to ask the federal government to come, we covered this a little bit earlier, but I want to make sure I understood. They can have the participant this question. Is it possible to ask the federal government to come and help remove the homeless so they can have?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I mean,
instead of a rescue.
we have to work with the federal government, obviously. I'm not sure I'm inclined to, I'm not sure I understand the question, but to do anything with. We have to work with the federal government, obviously. But at the same time, what I'm not sure I'm inclined to ask the current federal is making sure that there is a concerted plan for individuals in that respect. We're not just. But at the same time, what I think speaks to the crux of what that individual is talking about is making sure that there is a concerted plan for folks. That we're not just simply repeating the current unfortunate status quo with the city's approach, which is just a very chaotic sort of reactive-based problem where someone calls for an encampment, it gets cleaned up, and then just emerges in a different neighborhood. Making sure there's a recurring point of frustration that I've heard from neighbors and communities time and again. And whether we're talking to our federal stakeholders or even just people in the community, making sure that there's an actual plan of attack. Which I think that there is a good trend toward this regional conversation, but just making sure that we're actually being as effective and efficient and also as forward-focused in the long term. So we're not just consistently reacting to the same problem and giving people in the community greater certainty.
Yeah, I think if I'm trying to interpret the questions, I think one of the things that the federal government does, if we declare an emergency, like FEMA can come in and think about how we can try to unify solutions for people. I don't know if we're quite at that stage yet. I think what we're really seeing is look at some regional plan, think about how we can try to continue to find places for people to be I think that some of the work, I think the rescue mission, other piece of this, I want to make sure that it's very clear, right? We're getting closer and closer to having spaces available for people to move to. I think the other piece of this, I want to make sure I make this very clear, right? Because some part of the conversation has been kind of around the CAM ordinance that passed, right? And number one, I would just want to say that since the CAM ordinance was passed in 2022, we've arrested 2 folks kind of outward trapped. So in the end, that one person is currently living like that, and arresting people is not the answer. Connected drugs, renting house. Another person's currently still kind of out there. So in the end, removing encampments and things like that, arresting people is not the answer. Connecting people to shelter services is. And so that's why I've continued to look for a balanced approach to kind of lay it out.
Never looked better. How can we make it feel better? Okay. This question, and we have a lot. Downtown Tacoma has never looked better. How can we make it feel better? Diversity is key, and we have a lot. How can we diversity? Ornamental and housing types. 2, turn on fountains. 3, buildings with security guards.
So there were a lot there. So let me pick the part of it. One, yes, it was very clear. There was a commercial being shot in downtown. I got to go check out about 2 weeks ago. I asked them, why did you so there was a lot there. So let me pick part of it. One, yes, it was very clear. There was a commercial being shot in downtown. I got to go check out about 2 weeks ago. I asked them, why did you come down to Tacoma? Like, it's so clean, we get more types where we want to be. So it's clean, but sometimes it feels very sterile. There's not a lot of life to it. So that's a critical thing for the mayor. How do we get more life and energy down there? How do we get more types of businesses to be downtown to kind of bring that vibrancy? I could talk about this for a while. One thing I'm really passionate about, looking at some of those vacant commercial spaces and looking at Spaceworks and other programs where the city could take out a lease to get and then create lower, more affordable rent, more commercial businesses to kind of go into those spaces, right? Or when new development happens, we partner with the developers to get space. And yes, I would love us to turn on the fountains that is more affordable. We don't have so much businesses. We can bring some diversity. Bring the city. I was there and had 70 vibrancy downtown. And yes, I would love us to turn on the fountains. I can't believe we don't have one functioning fountain downtown.
So part of leadership
means
means
clarifying there
how we
has
got
70
to the current
70 of
problem,
them.
just like
I
with
think we're
housing
trying to get one
problems.
down.
So
again,
the
the
downtown has consistently struggled because, so part of leadership means clarifying how we got to the current problem, right? Just like with taxes or homelessness. So downtown has consistently struggled. Second was the because of 2 things. One, the mall. A lot of cities came in the 1950s, 60s. It evaporated the retail, which was most of the basis for downtown. But second was the city's response to the mall, which a lot of cities throughout the country engaged surface level parking lots, very well intentioned, but problematic and policy called urban. That's basically means how do we make the downtown more of a suburb? How do we have parking, surface level parking lots, parking garages? How do we outmall? So that's a very and the results are there, right? That's a very heavy. That means street narrowing. It means protected bike lanes. It means more trees. It means updating the infrastructure really comes from is just really in the short to medium term and trees, feeding the entrepreneurial spaces. And so that's a very long-term struggle because that is infrastructure heavy. That means street narrowing. It means protected bike lanes. It means more trees. It means updating the infrastructure to make it more urban. In the short to medium term, it means feeding the entrepreneurial activity that's already happening. So that means the area like around Mayoral, around the mix, around UWT, seeing what those entrepreneurs' individual neighborhood needs are and feeding that. And same things for knowledge. No one is disallowed.
Okay, coming back to the
it's more a question of like
how come national chains are not allowed,
for instance. It's a question of corporations making investment decisions on the presumption of very median income. To my knowledge, no one is disallowed. At least legally, it's more a question of like of providing recent Fred Meyer conversation on Hack Ave, for instance. It's a question of corporations making investment decisions on the time when it's just a clear plan, very median income, safety, and so forth. So in some respects, what's good for the Hilltop is good for any other neighborhood in the sense of providing safety, providing consistent follow-through, whether it's on a one response time or whether it's just a clear plan and a vision for what the neighborhood can be. That's what investment of all types is looking for, and that's something I'm absolutely committed to on the local level as well as for larger chains.
Right, so we have safety. Yeah, I think the question also comes back to I don't know if they're better or not, but one thing I think, yes, it looks, you know, that just as a better Safeway. I work to see here, like what would you want to see here, and kind of doing community assessment of that. But I think we're coming back to, like, we have Safeway, we'd love to see it be improved, and really trying to work much better at those organizations. Just you can, like, Safeway that looks safe, yes, it looks, you know, that just is a better Safeway. I work at Safeway on 38th Street, and so I think part of it would be that. But I think we're coming back to, like, what are the things we want to see, and really trying to work to attract those organizations. Because you can, like, there's a Starbucks in the Lincoln District. That was an effort to in the neighborhood to say, hey, we really want this, and they brought it in. So I think part of it would be working with the Hilltop Business District and some of the community members say, well, what is the thing we really want to see? You know, that would be that to try to attract. Like, what's something that's missing from a national chain that we would like to see here? You know, another maybe smaller scale grocery store would be great, right? I heard that they're trying to advertise Trader Joe's into the Spire building. But, you know, I would want that to be driven by the communities. I mean, it's a national change, right? Dedicated my life to, you know, through Avid working with students of color, black and brown students.
This question is simply
As
this.
a football coach,
Black
one of my
and brown
passions
lives
is young black men, and what we do to try to help them find meaningful and productive ways to engage. Yes, I mean, as a teacher, I dedicated my life to, through Avid working with students of color, black and brown students. As a football coach, one of my passions is young black men, and what we can do to try to help them find meaningful and productive ways to engage. Not only how to make sure that we value them, find meaning and purpose. Value it, not just saying it, but also I've talked to people about something as mayor that I really like to see into it. How can I continue to groups and bring a focus to that? Because I think it's about it's not only how do we value the life, but we value it through not just saying it, but also investing at the same time. Building structures around it, connecting people to it, investing in the community groups that support it. And so that's something I really want to do. It's, you know, the football coach in me, right? I didn't just coach football because I loved it. I love the kids, and I happen to coach football at the same time. And so, something I would.
What don't you do to ensure answers?
I'll give a couple examples. So in my second term, I've successfully pushed for the inclusion of equity empowerment in the city's compensation plan, so that when the city is actually coming up with this compensation philosophy for collective bargaining or for attracting and retaining and hiring quality. I'll give a couple examples. So in my second term, I successfully pushed for the inclusion of equity empowerment in the city's compensation plan, so that when the city is actually coming up with this compensation philosophy for collective bargaining or for attracting and retaining and hiring qualified city employees, that when the actual equitable considerations are how we pay for stuff. That's actually a prime example of following through and actually seeing actually following the values through actions on certain industries. A more heated example during my first term, when the paid sick and safe leave ordinance, which was later the basis for state law, was being discussed by the city council, there was an amendment put forward to weaken it effectively by exempting certain industries from which those orders may be protected by people of color. I successfully were killed and get sick, or if there's domestic violence. There was an amendment put forward to strike that requirement from folks in the healthcare, hospitality, and other sorts of industries, which are predominantly women and people of color, and I successfully killed that amendment.
It's about integrity. Okay, we have just a couple of more questions, and then we'll ask for closing comments. Can you describe a time? This one is about personal integrity, to make a politically convenient choice. A few more coming in. Anyway, this one is about integrity.
Many of these forums have heard me say this before. When we set up the tiny home village.
Can you describe a time when you faced pressure to make a politically convenient choice that chose instead to act based on principle?
I said, John, you didn't run on this. Like, this is many of you in these forums have heard me say this before. When we set up the tiny home village, 6 orchard block from my house, I got a lot of pressure from my neighbors about it. And so I stood up. They did not like it, but they pressured me. I said, John, you didn't run on this. Like, this is bad for the neighborhood. You should stop it. And I said, you know what? I believe in these limit homelessness, and I can't in good conscience say I want a lot of homelessness to just not my neighborhood. And so I stood up. There are parts of my neighbors where I still had a lot of pressure. I had people protesting outside of my house for a long time. I had someone circulate a flyer saying I was going to destroy the apartment, stab my cell phone number on it. And, you know, people put a lot of pressure on me that couldn't stop it. And it was very clear. There are parts of our city where they have had these kind of back down tiny home villages for a long time, and it's unfair that we have not had one. And it's our time to step up and do our part. Don't like me? And you know, people told me, you're not going to get reelected. It's going to cost you an election. I have a funny story on a Zoom where a guy cursed at me. I'll tell later if you want to hear.
So when I first came on the city
but I didn't
council
back down because I believe in it.
there was
And as the mayor, I'm going to stand up for things I believe in. And there are people out there who don't agree with me.
One of the items
don't
that we
like
had
me.
before us was
But the other day they say,
basically a tax
you tell
break
us the truth,
for
John, and you're very honest.
nonprofits and everything but name, very large, multi-billion-dollar. So when I first came on the city council, it was 2012, there was everything, just to repeat myself, there was a budget proposal of $12 billion. And one of the items that we had before us was removing basically a tax break for nonprofits and everything but name, very large, multi-billion-dollar organizations. And everything from the establishment, street repair technicians, it was for jobs, they'll move their offices to far away, at the same kind of spiel here, right? And I felt that was wrong because one, we were literally talking at the time about laying off cops and firefighters and street repair technicians, and it was really bad stuff. And I put my neck on the line. We passed a 5-4 vote to remove the tax break permanently. It generated tens of millions, and it turns out those organizations didn't even political isolation, but life went on. And we passed a balanced budget as a result. But because of that, and because of my leadership on issues like minimum wage, paid sick leave, and other advocacy for working families, I not only suffered intense pressure and even political isolation, but I even got a primary challenge in 2015, which I won. But I did my best to be principled and to be consistent. I guess I'll start.
Okay, yeah.
So I mean, I was not there in those meetings, right? So I'm not going to speak about privileged information. But that being said, I think that whether it's TPD or whether it's even just the current sloppiness. So I mean, I was not there in those meetings, right? So I'm not going to speak before I even open my mouth. But that being said, I think that whether it's TPD or whether it's even just the current sloppiness with taking on minimum wage, there is a crisis of credibility with the city with so many people I talk to. A lot of people, it's more a question of before I even open my mouth and say who my name is, and I say I'm on WhatsApp, I think that the path, a lot of them say that. And it's not about taking on any one individual. I mean, I know of, and I'm pretty friendly with most of that council, but it's more a question of people wanting to know what the actual plan is and just what's happening. So I think that the path forward isn't about relitigating the things that have happened so much as what are we going to do to prevent that from happening. For me, that comes down to culture. That comes down to who are we placing in those positions of the most supreme authority, especially people who have the power of life and death on the streets, and making sure that they are given not only simply the greatest training, but also the clearest expectations of the community's values and priorities.
Yeah. Since I was on the council, what I would say, looking back, being really clear with the public about the process. With the mayor, being really clear about what us to speak clearly about. Be really clear about what we were going to do to try to make sure this didn't happen again. And what we're going to do. And I think in multiple points. And so in that instance, that's part of leadership. We're not good on this. Waited for years. So as the mayor, the previous council, I really want us to speak clearly about what we can do. So most of the can't do existed, and what we're going to do to fix the problem. 10 years before I got on. And so, in that instance, we look for what we did. Things that had waited for years under the previous council's body-worn cameras. Now, remember, it happened in 2020, so most of the culture now existed in 8 to 10 years before I got on. And so, body-worn cameras were stalled for a long time under the previous council. We pushed it. We got it done.
Thank you. This has been a very lively
updating the use of force policy. We got it done. Updating the car dash cameras, and now we're pushing to try to do something oversight. And so I think that's what I would say. 2 minutes of process.
John?
2 minutes.
Thank you. This has been a very lively and
2 minutes. First of all, thank you so much for being here and engaging in this conversation. One thing is really disheartening. So. It's just been kind of a lack of conversation. 2 minutes, 3 minutes? Because I got one, or am I not? 2 minutes. First of all, thank you so much for being here and kind of engaging in this conversation. One thing that's been really disheartening to me is it's just been kind of a lack of conversation about this race. As I get out in public, I knock on too many doors of people who are like, and I think at the end of the day, mayor's race, what values are more important. So thank you all for being here and being engaged. I really appreciate it. And I think it's valuable to our community that this happens. This is who they are. I'm running for mayor. because I have some deeply held values. I have a deep value around, and I think at the end of the day, values are more important. I grew up in the South End, my dad was a truck driver. You get down to it, you can judge somebody on values, so no matter what happens, you know who they are, versus policies struggle with family members with addiction. So what are my values? And I have a deep value around stability and building a stable community. I grew up in the South End, my dad was a truck driver, and I lost both my parents at a pretty young age. I have experienced housing insecurity, struggled with family members with addiction, and it was deeply formed who I am. Another value core that stability is critical. And being a mayor who values stability, realizing we're working with the public, thinking more and more about how many of our children promote and sustain stable families, stable neighborhoods, and I think about even our older folks. Another value for mine is opportunity. So a deep value. I talked for a long time helping young people realize their dreams and thinking more and more about how many of our children are cut off from the opportunities that exist for them. And then the last one, I think about even about older folks. How do we make sure how many opportunities are cut off for building a city? So a deep value for me as the mayor is how do we open more opportunity to help more people in our community so they can find meaning, purpose, and engagement in life, commitment. And then the last one I think a lot about is how do we make sure that we don't just talk about building a city that meets your needs, but a city that helps you actualize and say, I was part, find purpose, meaning.
Thank you again so much, Ellen and me, and
As a
everyone
mayor, I'm
involved in
deeply
this for
committed to
your
helping
past
everyone
work,
find
for
meaning,
ongoing work, and
purpose,
what
and
we
a way
can
to
accomplish
contribute
together.
and help make the city better.
For me, this race
At
is
the end of the
really
day,
just
I
about
want
two
people to
things.
walk away
How do you
and
want
say,
to
I was
feel
part of
about
that.
your community? How do you want your community to meet? Thank you again so much, Ellen and me, and everyone who's involved in this for your past work, your current ongoing work, and what we can accomplish together. We have all the right ingredients. For me, this race is really just about two things, and that is how do you want to feel about your community? How do you want your community to make you feel? I remember that is driving first and foremost what I think the city is focused on. We have all the right ingredients. I was there. I'm a lifer myself. I have seen what positive transformation looks like. I remember I've also going to school and it's just problems that right? I remember driving through the Asarco smokestack tunnel with all the honking. I tell people I love seeing this film. I was there when it was blown up, and seeing what's come up there, right? Bring you to tears. And I've also seen the pernicious problems that was street. And when people ask me at the door, not just why are you running? And what else the family can do? I tell people I love Tacoma like a family. There are so many things that who else but your family can you just adore and just bring you to tears at how much you love them, and who else do manufacturing centers, just the sheer depth of innovation, creativity, and what else the family can inspire a lot of feelings, right? There are so many things that we have going from us from our waterfront, our talent, just the proper imagination, our positioning, the fact that we have two manufacturing centers, just the sheer depth of innovation, creativity, and gives you context and confidence. And there are a lot of just really petty things that we are so much better to you. That's how this came together, was just the proper imagination and dare I say courage. And that's my commitment, is not to get it right and not to always agree with you necessarily, but to give you context and confidence that when we make decisions, it's by and for you. That's my commitment to you. That's how this campaign has been running. That's how this city is going to be running. And this has been wonderful. Go to my website anytime. You're always welcome to check it out, andersibson.com. My cell phone is 253-370-0201. I'll be on card and coffee at a few lovely cafes in the and this has been wonderful. I'm looking forward to more continued engagement, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you again. Let's give them a round of applause.
To certainly thank our wonderful moderator, Mr. Evans. Once again, we want to certainly thank our wonderful moderator, Mr. Evans. Thank you for all of you, and thank you to the candidates. Those of you that would like to be a part of, it's good to see them on hot seat. And next month, it's going to be wonderful. Discussing Tara, she'll be taking answer information. Those of you that would like to be a part of our roundtable that will occur next month, we're going to be not only answers questions, discussing other topics, but we'll also be taking the answers, and we'll have a copy of what actually happened, today's actual time, and so that we can go back over the answers and the questions, make sure so that you don't have to, in their own voice, make up. And I think that they did what actually happened. Answering, you'll have an actual recording, and have also the leaders on the take that, and make sure that we have other correctly questions in their own voice. But I'd like for you, and I think that they did a wonderful job answering some good questions. If you can make sure that you write them down, send them to me. I'm sure you all have other follow-up questions. What I'd like for you to do is, if you think of other things, if you would just offer them, make sure that you just write your question, write them down, send them to me. My email, pastor@allenchurch.org, or you can ask, make sure that you're sitting in church, put it in the offering basket. Just write your questions, fold it up, and they'll get it to me. But more than that, ask your family members, ask people that we have access to your sororities and your fraternities with. Make sure that if nothing else, ask around. I know the telephone, find out, and so what are the topics and what questions that people really want to know. I will say this, we have access. As you know me, I stay in the middle. And we'll continue to, for me to stay in the middle with both of these. And if nothing else, I know the telephone number, so I'll get them. And so you have to make your own decision. But both of them, I will say this, as you know me, I stay in the middle. But it's easy for me to stay in the middle with both of these guys. I know both of them, and where your heart is. But you have to make your own decision. Says where your heart is, that's important for you to make your own decision based upon what the issues are that are most important. Make sure you find out. Make sure you find out. And if you know your heart is, you should come to Bible study. The Bible says where your heart is, that's where you got plenty of opinions. Not your head, it's your heart. Well, make sure you find out where those things are, and if you don't have an opinion, you should come to Bible study on Thursday. They got plenty of opinions. They do, yes, it's great. So that's one of them right there. Because you have an, but I want you to know, and even once again, this is, keep asking those questions. Absolutely awesome. Continue to engage. Ask them, ask questions. Go to their channel and ask them questions. Don't let them just slide by because you haven't asked the question. Also, and even once they get elected, keep asking those questions. Tasha Palmer is also. You ask me questions. Ask them. Go to their channel and ask them questions. That's why they are there. Also, I want you to know that. Mrs. Natasha Palmer is also here. She's running for City Council Senate. She was supposed to be very glad to. She just put in a couple of questions. Her had to leave, and just make sure that we stay engaged. And Reverend Mike, I want to thank you again. She's in. The reason why she's in a number of she came in, she was supposed to be a part of the panel, she just put in a couple of questions and had to leave because, after all, she says because her family has a long-standing, and so she's in America. But she's in the city. The reason why she's in a number of our business that she's in, political forums, sitting at that table, is because not only because her family has a long-standing African-American owned business, and this is how they're done, but because so the business that she's in, she has her finger on the pulse. You have to know what is going on, who's dying, and always talk about who's being affected and how they're dying. And so she and I compare notes quite often. And I would say you have to know that there are some things that folks don't always talk about or always make the news. And normally I would have to, it is a Christian for all of us to continue. More and more I'm finding that to be together. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you this. The Reds and the Blues love each other. You guys gotta love each other. Keep loving each other, all God's children. And normally I would have to talk to Christians like this. More and more I'm finding that in the political arena, I gotta talk to all y'all. Path forward, the Reds and the Blues. You guys gotta love each other. We are all God's children. And You know, if you don't agree, just don't agree, but let's give God some more praise. Pushing the path forward with our children this day, are relying on us, and waiting on us to do a great job. Person, in every family, all right? Let's give God some more praise. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for everything. We thank you, God, for every house, every person, every family that's represented in this space right now. That's our city. Make their homes a place of peace. From the greatest to the least, you just love on them, remind us, surround them all equal. Bless our city.
Amen, amen.
Bless our city.
Amen, amen, amen.
Come on, let's give God some more. From the greatest to the least, remind us that we are all equal at the peace. In that round table next one. Thank you. We need you.